Ron DeSantis gets pointed and personal, criticizing Donald Trump on a wide array of issues while trying to sell himself at the same time to Trump voters as better than the original. It is an understatement to call this new strategy risky. But the Florida governor is all in, issuing a statement this morning with links to 11 different Thursday interviews, all of them in the conservative echo chamber, in which he airs a long list of complaints about the former president. A big spender, he says. Not tough enough at the border, he says. Friend of Fauci. Too damaged to win the White House again. There's more as Governor DeSantis looks to use his first days as an official candidate to reset both his campaign and to reset the broader contours of a Republican race that right now is being run on Trump's turf. It is a tightrope no Republican has managed to walk before. Take on Trump without earning the ire of his loyal base. This is how Governor DeSantis right here hopes to keep his balance, with Trump-like promises to purge the deep state and to look even at giving clean slates to insurrectionists.
Do you think the January 6th defendants deserve to have their cases examined by a Republican president?
On day one, I will have folks that will get together and look at all these cases who people are victims of weaponization or political targeting, and we will be aggressive at issuing pardons.
Let's get straight to Miami. CNN Steve Contorno is there. Steve, it is an interesting and a risky strategy.
That's right, John. I've been covering Governor DeSantis for the better part of the last decade. I have heard him speak probably more than 100 times. I have never heard him go after the former president in such direct terms. And keep in mind, he was in Congress for 2 years while Trump was president. He was a closely aligned governor with Trump for 2 years as well. And during that stretch, he never really publicly raised any sort of criticisms with the Trump presidency. In fact, he often cheered it on, and he sought and ran on President Trump's endorsement when he ran for governor in 2018. But this change in strategy is clearly designed to try to urge some Republicans to get behind him and to cast the Trump years as not as great as maybe some people remember it. That's a risky bet. As you said, there are still a lot of Republicans who look back on those past 4 years fondly, even though they might be open to a potential alternative in 2024. The question is DeSantis pushing those people off the fence toward him or pushing them away from him because he is being so critical of someone they still really, really like? But DeSantis has got a lot of money behind him. He has raised over $8 million in the first 24 hours since he was since he jumped into the race. And he is going to put that money behind this message, get out in front of as many voters as possible, and continue to make his case to conservative media that he is the best person to lead this fight and to go into the White House and use the presidency in a way that Republicans have been too scared to use it before, John.
That's the fascinating beginning of the official DeSantis campaign. Steve Contorno for us in Miami. Steve, thank you for getting us started. Let's bring the conversation in the room with me to share their reporting and their insights. CNN's Lauren Fox, Zolan Kano-Youngs of the New York Times, and Jackie Kucinich of the Boston Globe. I call it a tightrope. The question is it different? Is it different now that Trump has been president than it was in 2016 when Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, John Kasich, Rand Paul, and so on and so forth said Donald Trump's not a real conservative, Donald Trump's not a good person. Ron DeSantis saying he's not a committed conservative, he's damaged goods, I can win, he can't. Can you sell that? Can you go that aggressively after Donald Trump and keep enough of the Trump voters to win the Republican nomination?
That's what Ron DeSantis is banking on. Whether he'll be successful is something else entirely. I mean, Trump is doing the same thing he did during that race. He's mocking him. He's coming right at him. They took advantage of the fact that his initial launch was less than desired. We'll put it that way. And DeSantis also has a lot of competition for that lane. And so it kind of seems like we're watching the same movie, honestly, where you're having all these other people pulling the people who don't want Trump back. And DeSantis hasn't really, he's above them, but he hasn't really proved he can surmount Trump yet.
Right, that is the challenge. And again, how do you, the DeSantis calculation is Trump's going to get 30% of the vote in most states, maybe he'll get 35% here. Can you peel away enough of that in a crowded field? Listen to one of the things he's trying to say, because he knows he has to be careful. Donald Trump, essentially, he says, was great, not anymore.
I don't know what happened to Donald Trump. This is a different guy today than when he was running in 2015 and 2016. And I think the direction that he's going with his campaign is the wrong direction.
again, trying to convince Trump voters, come to me. I will be Trumpy, but I don't have the baggage. I don't have the grievances. I don't have the negativity. Maybe I can win independence.
This is a difficult balancing act here. He's not criticizing the values, the policies of the former president, but trying to criticize the candidate. And I thought my former colleague Jonathan Martin made a good point in his column today, basically saying that there is this sort of risk here when you criticize the former president, particularly since he has such a grip on the party right now. Do you come off as being not a member of the GOP, not one that is supportive of Trump and the party, but more so the other side? Somebody that actually is giving in to Democrats and actually helping out President Biden when you criticize Donald Trump. It's interesting to see him DeSantis continue to make these comments, trying to have a distinction between the policies that Trump supported and saying he no longer is the best candidate to continue to support them, pointed to things such as the border, such as COVID, but while DeSantis continues to use language that is so similar to that of the former president.
And so you mentioned the Jonathan Martin column in Politico. Let me read a piece from it because it's a smart column. But he quotes David Kokel, a very veteran Iowa Republican strategist. The conservative media ecosystem has built a giant wall of inoculation around everything Trump. All our voters have ever known about Trump is he's constantly under attack. So he's got these antibodies built up. So Lauren Fox, that's the question. Can somebody like Ron DeSantis, when Chris Christie says this, or John Kasich says this, or Jeb Bush says this, Trump has already pre-programmed his base to not listen to those people. He's disqualified them. Don't listen. Ron DeSantis is one of them, or at least he wants them to believe he's one of them. Can a Trumpy take on Trump, I guess?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest questions is, will Ron DeSantis be successful at something that everyone else who has been circling getting into the presidential race or has already gotten into the presidential race has decided not to do? He is really the first one who is taking on Donald Trump in such a direct way. And in some ways, he had no other choice, right? If Donald Trump is going to come after you in the way that Donald Trump came after him right after announcing, perhaps he feels like this is the moment to try. But you raise such a good point, which is that Donald Trump and his supporters, anyone who comes after them, they're just not conservative.
Well, Trump himself has been going after DeSantis constantly. And again, if we could just show the picture of the Republican presidential field, you see on the left side of your screen, the candidates are already in the race. You see on the right side of your screen, candidates who are considering the race. Donald Trump has said good things about Tim Scott. He has said some nice things about Vivek Ramaswamy, for example. He is attacking Ron DeSantis constantly. Several times a day, he goes after him. He calls him a bad nickname, Ron DeSanctimonious. We'll see if that sticks. But Ron DeSantis yesterday asked in those conservative interviews, why do you think he's coming after you? And Ron DeSantis says, it's pretty obvious.
He understands that I've got a good chance to beat him because he doesn't criticize anybody else now. It's only me. They know that I'm more likely to win the election. For him to say that we're not winning in Florida, nobody has taken a state from being a swing state 4.5 years ago to now being a red state in such a dramatic fashion.
It is interesting to watch him. And again, he's speaking in the conservative echo chamber. He's speaking to people, many of whom are inclined to support Donald Trump. They essentially flipped a switch. As Steve was noting, up until then, he was gentle in his criticism of Trump. They've decided we're in now. This is the only way, as Chris Christie says, the only way to beat Trump is to go through Trump.
Yep. And he is being attacked because he is a threat. That is very, very clear. I think the former president's people have been pretty clear about that. But DeSantis is going to have to figure out a way to make himself distinctive and not just be Trump light, as Nikki Haley said during one of her stops.
Right, and if you look at our poll, I just want to show right now Republican voters do keep Trump and DeSantis at the top of the pack. Who are you open to voting for? Would support or consider supporting Trump 84%, DeSantis 85%. You see the others who are that 6 and 10 or less there. Here's the question. If DeSantis is going to daily now, repeatedly attack Trump in the conservative ecosphere, watch that number. Does that number stay constant or does it go down? If it goes down, it's not working. If it stays constant, maybe there's an opening.